Wow, it's another round of applause so she can see it, or they can see it. Having been a library worker now for 30 years in September, this encapsulates like almost every day some joy and some heartbreak. And it feels like as things get better, they get worse, and then they get better, and then they get worse again. I think you guys did just a remarkable job. We don't have a ton of time, and this is a conversation with the audience. I'm just going to maybe ask, I've got so many questions I wrote down throughout the movie, but just in terms of the archival work, it feels as though you had a million options in terms of who to profile, what archives to explore. How did you make those curatorial decisions and compress it into like an 80-minute film ultimately?
Thanks. It took a long time. And I love history, and so I just kept gathering more and more and more stories and trying to squeeze them all in and overwhelming the story for a long time. And eventually I had an editor who came in who was ruthless and just helped me trim them down. But I mean, there could be, hopefully this will inspire more people to make more library films, because there could be so many of them.
We have a database of thousands of photos that we've collected in the last 10 years. And in this one, what finally ended up was about 700 archival pieces. So it's a lot. And it was a lot to find out who owned them and how much you had to pay for them.
And if you want to learn a few more of those stories, there's another 30 minutes to this film in the broadcast version that's going to be on PBS. So you'll learn all about Andrew Carnegie, the good and the bad.
The number of women early on, we showed a name after name, profile after profile. I'd never heard of a single one of them. And I've been, coming to this building or libraries in New York, with the Seward Park Library for a while, my entire life. And so just the work that you're doing of exposing these people is just such an incredible service.
I have to say, libraries are great in holding all kinds of stories, stories of other people, but they're not very good at holding their stories, telling their stories of their own themselves. We found photo albums underneath, the sink in the staff room that somebody said, "Oh yeah, I think Mrs. Jones had some things over here," and so things are just pulled out of the woodwork. Actually, it was pretty astonishing.
Yeah, and I apologize on behalf of all my colleagues around the country, because we are horrible at documenting our own story, but great at documenting the story of others. So we need outsiders like you both to come in and help us tell the story, which again is just profound. I'm watching the documentary, and I'm wondering, in light of, and Brooks at the outset mentioned IMLS is looking to be closed or defunded, or however you want to describe it. I've read that it might be changed, where we would be able to provide some sort of patriotic education. And I'm wondering, like, after having seen that documentary, would this be considered a patriotic documentary, or would this be banned just because it tells stories that are actually not some of which are not wonderful?
No, I mean, I feel like this is the American story. We're just constantly evolving and trying to make it a better place for everybody. That's my America.
I think there's so much focus on individualism right now, and the divides and the profit motive, that it's hard to imagine this idea getting off the ground. If we were just trying to start libraries right now, people would be like, wait, we're just going to trust people to bring it back, and we're going to let them take it home for free. But, we have a very, very long, rich history of really being on the forefront of the common good. We were the first country in the world to make free public education available to the great masses of people. And even though, of course, there have been libraries for thousands and thousands of years, what's really new in the United States is this idea of building libraries in all these small little communities that everybody is welcome at, that's totally free, and that's large. It's the very first time in the world that libraries were a female profession. Not that there weren't always men and often at the heads of the institutions, but it's the first time that there were a lot of women, and they were really the ones on the ground serving the public for the most part for a very long time. And now I'm happy to say that there's whole new generations of young men librarians too, who are like leading a whole new tradition, which is great.
This idea of the common good and libraries as sort of serving community, a lot of people are talking now about this kind of the solitude epidemic and the loneliness epidemic. You know, one of the things that I've always been attracted to in libraries are people who are, you know, in the best sense of the term, are kind of weird, right? The nerds, the freaks. I love those people. I was one of them. I probably still am. I love that kid who was complaining about his back and his legs. And you should bring him to all of your talks because he's awesome. So
he's probably in college by now. That was years ago. No, he's in high school at least.
just tell us.
I'm sure he's nerdier than he was before.
I'm sure that some of those people had meant a lot to you, and so tell me about just some of the people that you met. The woman with the 14 kids, also just really an incredibly expansive way of thinking that was kind of surprising. So we had to check our own biases.
She's getting close to 20.
Wow.
She's had 2 more. Last time I talked to her, and she might have had 1 more since then.
Golly.
That's her goal. That's her goal. Yeah.
Good
Can
for
I ask you a
Gatetown.
question really quickly?
Sure.
Did you say you went to the Seward Park Library?
I worked at the New York Public Library for 12 years. Yeah, spent a lot of time in Seward Park.
Okay, every time we show this film, somebody says that they used the Seward Park Library when they were a kid. So anybody? I see. It's the weirdest thing. There are 17,000 public libraries, and that one just seems to have like touched more lives. So, just a little aside.
There are so many people we met along the way. It's hard to pinpoint one of them, or even 2 of them. But I mean, yeah, there's not just stories in the books and on the shelves, but people sitting in the seats, you know, of the libraries. So, yeah, it's every day there's a story unfolding.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to pause because I've got many more, but time will just sort of disappear. So I think we'll open it up now to some audience questions, and we'll see how that goes. And if not, I've got some more that I can ask. All the way in the back.
Yes, how long did the project take, part 1 for traveling and then part 2 for compiling and editing?
We got our first grant in 2014. We were researching and thinking about it before then, but and then we traveled around for about 4 years. Then we went into editing, and we were almost done right before COVID hit. We had what we say locked picture, where all the editing decisions were done, and then we were going to have to get all the archival rights and everything, but all the archives shut down, including the National Archives, where a lot of the stuff came from. They were closed for close to a year and a half. And in that time, Dawn, what you should never do is she opened it back up, and like Pandora's box. But we wanted to like try and figure out, you know, what libraries' response was to the COVID shutdowns, because all of a sudden they were like called away as government workers, as first responders, and they were giving out COVID tests, and as well as trying to serve their community with the book needs.
And doing all kinds of online services. That's when I really started using the library online more rather than in person, although now I'm going back to the library with this film.
And then after that, so anyway, we worked it out eventually, and then it took, where are we, 2025? 5 years of more editing.
And our friends up
And
there
fundraising.
from ULC were through the most painful part of it with me. When I
thank
just
you.
kept adding things instead of taking them out and finishing, but it finally got there.
Thank you. Over here on the right.
Thank you. What do you hope viewers take away from this film?
I hope you go and thank your librarian for being there and fighting for, keeping the doors open.
You know, it changes almost every time I watch it because there's so many things happening in our country right now that become timely again, or there's just so much going on and so many chapters of history coming back at us that I think what I hope we take away, I mean, one is a little bit, hard to embrace, which is like we never win battles. You just have to keep fighting them over and over and again. But on the positive side, like this is a movement that was largely run by ordinary people, just standing up in their own little community and, standing up in a city council meeting way back then, and women who never used to do that kind of thing, showing up, writing letters to Andrew Carnegie, and getting a groundswell movement going in their own town. And, that's how things bubble up from the grassroots. And if we did it during, the major push of the library movement happened right during Reconstruction after the Civil War. If we could do it after we were torn apart by a war, and we managed to keep our libraries going in the Great Depression, we can keep them going.
Good question, though.
Hey, how you doing? Firstly, thank you to all the librarians that's in the house. Thank you for doing this film. I wanted to know, currently, is there any legislation that's on the books or coming up that would, that the people can, be interested in, that would secure funding and a future for libraries across the country?
That's for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, we've talked about, and I won't assume that everybody knows what the Institute of Museum and Library Services is, but that is the one federal agency that supports libraries across the United States, the District of Columbia and Territories. It's a small agency. Its budget is less than $300 million, but the impact is phenomenal. What they can do all over the country. In DC Public Library gets about $1 million a year. We do everything from sign language interpretation to staff training to emerging technologies and dozens of other things. All that's on the chopping block at the moment. And you can absolutely do things even if you live in the district. Of course, we don't have representation in the district, so it's hard to call your senator and your representative. But you can sign on to petitions. You can call elected officials in other states. You can protest. You can do a whole host of things. Brooks, what's the best site to go to for more information on all this stuff?
I would say go to ulc.org or go to ala.org.
So ulc.org, ala.org, and you'll find lots of places that you can plug in. And thank you for asking.
And if you live in D.C. and you can't call your representatives because you don't have them, you could call mine in Louisiana because they need to hear from you.
And I also have to say, I hate paying taxes. This is April, and we have to pay them, but, we have to pay taxes to pay for these sort of things. It really is important. Unfortunately, some of our taxes go to things that I really don't want to pay for, but you have to.
Anybody else?
How much time do we have? Oh, there's one.
Thank you so much for coming to speak about the film and showing the film. One thing that I thought was especially meaningful in this moment was you featuring people standing up and saying, no, I won't give over, these patrons' personal information, or I won't let people be basically surveilled in my library. What supports did you see that enabled librarians to be able to kind of stand up in that way, whether from their community or otherwise?
Historically, you mean?
Historically, yeah, and as libraries across the country.
I think librarians are quite demoralized right now, to tell you the truth. They're dealing with an awful lot. And so Lucy really means it when she says, please go in and thank your librarian for what they do. But they have incredibly strong organizations, membership organizations, that have been around since the very beginning. So Melville Dewey, not only did he invent the Dewey Decimal System, he also started the American Library Association and Library Journal and a bunch of institutions that have been around and are still here and are very active in fighting legislation that they feel harm libraries. So that's a big one. The Library Union, let's give it up for the library unions on National Library Workers' Day. And then just community support. I mean, I think what's particularly hard for librarians right now is that they're used to being seen as these sort of respected, admired leaders in their communities and trusted as like sources of information, but also just members of their community. And for them to be being accused by certain groups of being pedophiles or groomers is really pretty traumatic. But what's happening is that a lot of people are coming out as a response of that. So shortly after the pandemic, there were a lot of angry people at city council meetings and library commission meetings, and they were kind of there alone. And then as soon as word got out what was happening in these meetings and with librarians, there are massive crowds showing up across the political spectrum to support their libraries. So I think part of what gives them hope is how broad the support is for libraries in blue areas, red areas, purple areas, green areas. Like always, every survey that I've seen, and I've been watching them for the last 10 years closely, the vast majority of Americans feel like having a public library in their neighborhood or their community is incredibly important to their community, whether they use it or not, which I think is interesting.
And I want people to remember too that a librarian is actually has a master's degree in library science. So they are well educated and they're trained to, take care of business here in the library. People, think a volunteer can do that and check out the books, but they don't have the information that you may need all the time.
Yeah, in that, I don't know if you guys remember in that Oregon county where they had to close down all of the libraries for a while. It was a county-funded system, and the county ran out of money for it. It's been sort of a mixed bag what's happened since then, because that was a few years ago. Some of them are still completely closed. 2 of them have reopened, totally volunteer run with absolutely no budget, but at least they're open. And at least 2 of the other ones, the individual towns that they're located in realized okay, well, if the county's not gonna pay for it, we need our library back really badly. And they went on to pass tax measures to support it at the town level. So lots of things can happen.
Was that it there? How much more time do we have? Okay, maybe we can, oh, I'm sorry, there's one over here. Chanel.
Hey, thank you so much for this amazing documentary. I've already started sharing with my friends, when it comes out on April 29th. But what's a message that you think, us in the audience, we should take back to our communities, to our friends, in addition to sharing this documentary and, the lessons that we've learned?
I'm sorry, can you,
Yeah.
I didn't hear it all that well.
What's a message or what's something we should share with our friends, and our family, members who may not necessarily believe in, the message that you're trying to share with us on the power of the library? What should we share with them, as a take-home lesson?
Messages to share with people who may not use the library?
Yeah, absolutely.
To get them to become supporters?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think this notion that was brought up a minute ago about people don't like paying tax, the value that people get from public libraries is profound. There are all these sorts of business calculators that suggest, you know, a simple visit to the library to borrow a book or to use a study room or to use the Wi-Fi saves residents a tremendous amount of money. Libraries put an incredible amount of value, or they give an incredible amount of value back to residents. We ultimately save money in terms of the variety of work that we do within our buildings. So we're super efficient. You know, not only do we get kids books, not only do we provide people entertainment, we are human services organizations without having a whole host of human services staff. I mean, it's incredible how much libraries do for people. And you see when the library is closed, the repercussions of us not being around. And we saw some of that during COVID and in the film. So, I mean, I would just stress that, you know, it's a public space that works really hard for a whole host of things, literally dozens and dozens of things, and it's a good investment.
And I would like to add, you should just tell your friends to go to the library if they haven't been to one lately, because, or just sign up for their, you know, their newsletter, because I don't know about you, I mean, I think it's the same thing here. Like in San Francisco, I get these newsletters and it's like, oh, there's a knitting class, I want to do that, or, you know, we can go paint, or there's a, you know, a sci-fi book club you could join. I mean, it's just have them come back to the library, because it seems like we hear these stories of people, you know, they love the library, they used it, their mom took them there to get their library card, they did story time, you know, and then if they're lucky, they had a school library that they could hang out in, and then if they were lucky enough to go to college, they had a college library, and they sort of drift away from the library. But then they have their kids, and then they bring the kids back, and they start all over again. But there's a whole bunch of people who think like, oh, I've Googled, I don't need to go to the library. I got everything I need on Google, and Amazon can bring it to my door. But you can't have community like that.
I would also like to add to your question. I want everybody to not only to realize how much new stuff is happening in libraries, but what a crucial moment this is for them. And like that lady at the very end said, you know, we don't want to look back. These are ours. They belong. We pay for them. They belong to us, and they're like part of our American heritage. But they can disappear like that, and that it's really important. Like it was back then in the, you know, late 1800s, early 1900s, when they were fighting to get them built, we're going to have to fight to keep them.
That might be a good ending note. I mean, it's a sobering thought, but I mean, and it's this notion that the fight has to go on, and it probably will never end. But
it's fun to fight for the library.
Yeah. But with allies like you know, I'm feeling a lot more optimistic now than I was, you know, a couple of hours ago, which is great.
Yay!
And by the way,
that's what we want people to take away.
The DC Public Library newsletter is called Beyond Words. You can sign up for it at the library website. I believe it comes into your inbox every Tuesday, and it's true. It's like an amazing amount of stuff that we promote every single week. You don't have to love books. I tell people that all the time. I was not a book person when I was growing up, but I love the library. So, you know, you have to dispel some people of that myth. In any event, folks, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for this incredible, incredible piece of art. Any final words from either of you?
Yes, just a couple words. Please. That really helps us if we're gonna try and get some more funding so we can take it around to other organizations. Oh,
did you want to say something?
Okay, so there's a QR code. Y'all, hopefully you know how to do it. If you don't, I'll show you. So fill that survey out, and then please tell all your friends about on Independent Lens, April 29th. It will be the national broadcast. And Fern, I just want to thank Fern for inviting us here today.
Making this event happen.
And you, Richard, thank you so much. ULC, thank you too. Chanel, she dresses like she sounds.
And all those fellas up there in the booth who did such a fabulous job.
Yeah, thanks.
And thank you guys all out for coming and for caring about your libraries.
Okay, and Fern?